Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. I'm now pleased to say I'm the owner of a granite surface plate. This was given to me by a very kind viewer and subscriber to my channel. You must have seen what I was using before. That was a granite cutting board, which actually worked very well. It was, I guess, more than accurate enough for the sort of work I was doing, but it's nice to have a proper surface plate now for the workshop. The main purpose of this video is actually to show you a new tool that I have in the workshop, and it relates to these objects on the surface plate here. I mean, previously I used scribing blocks to mark out work, hole positions for drilling and machining. This one is a Starrett. It was actually given to me. I bought some tools off a gentleman that was selling a lot of tools at a car show, and there are lots of items there, and I just sort of picked a few bits and pieces out, and he said, well, what about this? I said, well, I mean, I do have the scribing block. He said, well, yeah, we'll take that. It's no use to me. So this is, very, very nice indeed. To have a nice Starrett one, which literally cost me nothing at all. Prior to that, I bought this one, which is a Moore and Wright scribing block, which is quite beautiful. It came in its original wooden box as well. I bought this on eBay, and if memory serves me, I think it only cost me about £8. There must be huge numbers of these around, and I know that this is often made as an apprentice test piece, but this is a genuine Moore and Wright one. It has the Moore and Wright engraving on the back there, and obviously another use for scribing blocks is you could add a test dial indicator to it to measure squareness of material as well. I mean, I just set this up with a 1, 2, 3 block. I mean, you have got a sort of a fine adjustment on the back here as well, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's quite interesting testing this. This is one of a pair of 1, 2, 3 blocks that I've had for quite a long time. They were a present to me. They're just the sort of import ones. They're not, the massively expensive ones sort of made in the UK or America. This, I guess, comes from China, but this is a half thousandth gauge, and it's actually the block is amazingly accurate. I was quite surprised, really, but I just sort of put that on to sort of illustrate one of the uses for the surface plate. Some time back, Tubal Kane, Mr. Pete, did a series of videos on making a scriber. I was sort of fascinated by this and thought, well, that would be such a nice thing to have for the workshop. So I watched his video a few times, and I don't know I can't remember if he had any plans drawn up for this, but I just jotted down some notes. I managed to get hold of a fairly hefty piece of steel here to fabricate the base. The column here is a piece of silver steel or a drill rod, and then the rest of it's made out of a mixture of different items that I had to hand. So this can obviously be locked in position, and the arm on here is in two parts. The scriber itself, when I think possibly the ideal thing would be make that out of carbide, but there's nothing like that available. And what I did have was a length of high-speed steel. So I cut a section off and ground a sharp point to it, so I've got two nice sharp edges here. And obviously with this I have some slip gauges that can be brought down onto a slip gauge to measure a particular height, and then sort of locked in place, and then I can use that then to describe material. I have put a scale on here. It's, well, I guess not accurate enough for most machining work. If you were doing something where extreme accuracy wasn't important, you could use this, but I only did this because Tilbert did this on his one. I thought, well, I'll follow his design completely. Um, when I got the slip gauge, I started playing around with this, and I found there is a slight problem with it in that I'm not getting a terribly accurate setting here. I think the problem is that the collar here is actually a bit too loose. It needs to be a much better sliding fit on here, so that when you lock this, there is a slight movement in the scriber here itself. So what I planned to do was to sort of make this part again and make it a much better fit. Now, bearing in mind that I made this some years ago now, and I'd only had my workshop for a short time, so there's probably boring this out. My inexperience didn't make it a good enough fit, but that's something I can work on and improve that. And it was on sort of thinking about this and the scribing blocks and everything else that I had a look on eBay recently, and I saw an item. I thought it's something that I've got to have this if I can possibly get it, and this is it. There we are. This is a proper height gauge. It's made by a company called All Precision Engineering, and they're in Horsham in Sussex, or were in Horsham in Sussex. It's called a Monoball. I've been trying to look into this to find more information on it. What I'm going to do, I'll bring the camera a little bit closer so you can see the detail of this a little bit better. So bear with me for just a moment. Now the gauge, it is a patented design. I have tried to look up the patent on it, but so far I've had no success with that. And I'm assuming that the reason it's called a monoball is that in the column, if you can see this okay, it has a series of ball bearings in here. And sort of playing around with the height gauge, this is sort of the sort of things that I found out that each ball bearing gives you a locking position on the height gauge itself. So as you raise this up and down and lock it, it actually locks into the ball bearing itself. That does seem to give you a very, very positive register. Now, it has division markings on here, and each division is half an inch, 500 thousandths. But the wonderful thing about it is that it also has a micrometer adjustment on it, and this is a half-inch thimble. So if you bring the gauge right down to the bottom here, and then lock that into position there. You can then use this adjustment, can be adjusted to raise this up. So if I put a piece of cigarette paper under there and then bring this down to the minimum setting here, and we go down to 0, you see that does hold. I mean, I can pull that out, but you see it gives you basically a perfect register against the surface here. If it's out of tool, it's going to be by such a small amount. So obviously what you can do is, this can be sort of raised up, as I say, in half-inch increments, and then to make any adjustment between that and the next setting, you just use the micrometer to raise the height gauge up. And the extent of this is, it's marked up to 11.5, but I think they say it's a 12-inch instrument, so you can measure up to a 12-inch height. I thought this was such a fantastic design. The name Monoball meant something to me. I think I must have looked at one of these possibly on eBay quite a long time ago. The idea was, well, obviously to use this as a scriber. And I think it would be possible to use the level here, but the edge, I presume this is all made out of hardened tools still, so it has got quite a sharp edge. I gently rub that against the piece of metal, and it does make a mark, albeit quite a light mark. I looked on the internet to see if I could find any information on this at all, and I did find a whole batch of pictures of this particular height gauge. And what it appeared is that whether it's something that someone had made for it, or whether it was a genuine accessory, but they made a little scriber that could be mounted below this measuring position here. So I fabricated one of my own. This basically is the same as the one I have on my own scriber here. That can be released and you can pull this out. I guess so you could put a clock gauge onto this as well using the same thing. So I made another one, made this out of brass, and I made another high-speed steel scribe. So that would be mounted against this. So once you've reached your measurement, this can be mounted below, so that is the cutting edge is level with the height measurement there. So that this can then be put over the top, and then locked in place. So that now gives you a nice sharp scribing edge on either side. And I suppose when it's not being used, I guess you can either take it off or just slide that back out the way, still giving you this edge here to position onto a gauge block or whatever you're wanting to measure. It also has a little hole in here. I've not sort of really worked out what that's for. One picture of this I did see, it had something mounted in here, but the picture was not very good, and if you enlarged the picture, it was so blurry you couldn't see what it was. But I'm just wondering whether that may have been a clamp to clamp a clock gauge or something like that onto. I can't sort of particularly think what other use that would have. I did wonder before I made this whether a clamp had been made between the base of this and this hole, but I don't really know. But anyway, if there's anyone out there that knows anything more about the monoball height gauge, I'd be very interested to know. I mean, I think this is such a beautiful item, really. I mean, there are masses of height gauges available on eBay. Some of them are obviously extremely expensive, and this is not an item I could ever have really afforded to buy new. I hate to think what this would have cost when it was brand new. A huge amount of money, I guess. It's got the base is a nice solid base. I assume it's a casting. I'm being very, very careful with it on here, but that the base does seem to be fine. I can't find any burrs or anything on here. I mean, I wish in a way I had nice stones that I could just sort of gently rub this over. I'm going to try and find one that it is, completely flat, that I could just stone this just to make sure it is going to be absolutely fine. But in the meantime, I'm just going to have to be very, very careful with it on the surface plate. But I think it's such a sort of a wonderful thing, really. I'm quite pleased with it. It's got a little discussion on here with the company details, APE or APE, Monoball, Horsham, Sussex, and I think originally it had a little logo in here as well. Obviously it's fallen off at some point in the past. It's got a little engraving on here, so I guess this was used by an engineering workshop, and this is probably a stock number they have for the particular tool itself. But anyway, if anyone out there knows more about this and give me any other information on it, I'd be very pleased to hear. That really concludes it, really. There's one other thing I wanted to show you as well, but bear with just a moment. For the workshop, one of the difficult things, particularly for me where I live, is that we are not in a city that has any sort of engineering background to speak of, although one area was fairly big on the production and work on trains in the past, but a long, long time ago. So there's not sort of engineering firms that I could perhaps contact to see if they have any offcuts of material or drops or anything that I could buy, aluminium, brass or steel. So obviously I'm always on the lookout for any bits of metal I can use in the workshop, not very successfully though. But so generally for materials, I just buy materials as and when I need them. I don't just buy material randomly for stock, really, because it's putting quite a lot of money that can be spent these days in lots of other ways. But recently, my son contacted me to say, I've got a piece of metal for you, Dad. Hopefully it would be useful. He said it's a bit rusty, but maybe it's something you could make something out of. And this is what he brought me. How about that for a bolt? It is a bit rusty. It's got a square head on it with a long shank here with a massive thread on the end of it. It's something to do with the railways. Apparently, it was I guess sort of found lying around somewhere or other. But I'm sure this can be cut up and I can make something out of it. I'm sure. This was, I think, this was about, if I remember right, about 20 26 or 27 mil diameter. I have put a file to it as well, and a file will cut it. So I mean, I guess it is probably a hardened bolt anyway, but I'm sure as a file mark tip that my insert cutters will machine this okay. But what do you think of that? I think it's going to be wonderful. Perhaps a few of these would be quite useful. Perhaps one or two in brass as well. Anyway, that really brings me to the end of my video today. Thank you very much for joining me, and again, many thanks to all the subscribers to my channel. I've added quite a few just recently, which is quite nice. And I'm having some sort of nice conversations with other YouTubers as well at the moment, which is a really nice thing, you know, to just sort of comment on one another's channel and work and so forth. And any advice that sort of comes my way is always very, very useful. Anyway, I hope to have another video for you very soon. Thank you very much. Bye now.